This year's Daytona 500 is officially sold out. NASCAR expresses some concerns over supply chain issues, and the next-gen car gets its first real taste of pack racing action at Daytona. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. As of recording this, the two-day test at Daytona is beginning to ramp down. They began testing yesterday. They tested into the evening. They've been testing today since the morning. We're going to analyze some clips of the next-gen testing in a large pack in just a few moments. But there's other big news coming out of Daytona this week that we need to react to here today. First, if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR news, notes, rumors, predictions, and much more nearly every single day. The Clash at the Coliseum is right around the corner. Things are continuing to heat up. Tune into Out of the Groove to make sure you're up to date on all things NASCAR. First things first, a couple familiar names announced their intentions to run this year's Daytona 500, beginning with past Daytona winner David Ragan. Not the Daytona 500, but he has won at Daytona in a NASCAR Cup Series car. That's right, David Ragan will run a few races this year for Rick Ware Racing. Bob Hockers from Fox Sports reporting that David Ragan will drive multiple races for RWR. He will be in one of the two chartered cars he will test today and race in the Daytona 500. He will have a charter, so David Ragan will not have to worry about surviving his dual race. He will be in the Daytona 500 no matter what. This isn't the first time he's come back to run the Daytona 500 since retiring from full-time NASCAR action. I mean, he's won twice at super speedways in his career. I like seeing him run these races. I hope he does well. I think he will do well. And right now it looks like the car count for the Daytona 500 is teetering right around 40. So while I am looking forward to the dual races, it's unclear if anyone who shows up to Daytona will actually be going home. We can talk more about that in a moment. We can talk about that more in a second, because the second big bit of news today, Jacques Villeneuve is back. He tested at the Charlotte Roval a few weeks back. He's been testing this week at Daytona, and he confirmed today that he will attempt to qualify for the Daytona 500. He's 50 years old. He won the F1 championship way back in 1997. He was the 1995 Indianapolis 500 winner. One of the most accomplished racers of our time. He's made a few NASCAR Cup Series starts. He did try and fail to qualify for the Daytona 500 back in 2008, I believe. He's probably more well known by NASCAR fans for his Xfinity Series starts at tracks like Road America, Montreal, around like 2010, 2011, 2012, that era. The Nationwide Series era, if you will. He was always competitive, ran top 5, led laps in pretty much every race, ruffled some feathers without a doubt along the way. Dude's obviously an incredibly successful race car driver. I think it's cool to see him attempt to qualify for the Daytona 500. Now, he'll be racing for Team Hesseberg, that 27 car, an all-new team. That team does not have a charter. Remember, they're only expected to run a handful of races this season with a mix of drivers behind the wheel. But with no charter, theoretically, Villeneuve will have to race his way into the Daytona 500, likely through the dual races. But if there's only 40 cars or less on the entry list, he's not going to have to worry about that. I mean, he'll still want to run well and qualify well, but he's not going to have to worry about missing the show. And right now, aside from the 36 chartered teams, which are guaranteed a spot in the Daytona 500, the only open teams that seem likely to attend are Beard Motorsports, we'll have Noah Gragson behind the wheel, MBM with Timmy Hill, Hesseberg obviously with Jacques Villeneuve. That puts the field size at just 39. There are other teams that could show up, perhaps like a Gaunt Brothers. I know NY Racing or New York Racing, whatever they're called, is considering, they're teasing a potential Daytona 500 run. So there's a very real possibility that we will be at or even slightly under 40 cars for this year's Daytona 500, which means Jacques Villeneuve will not have to worry about making the field at the very least. It'll be cool to have a former F1 world champion, a world-class driver like that in the Daytona 500 field, even though he may be sure he's past his prime, sure he's had issues with some people in NASCAR in the past. I think it's a pretty cool situation. I think it's great. A world-class race like the Daytona 500 should appeal to world-class drivers from outside the world of NASCAR. As for the field size, I mean, it's disappointing. You'd like to see more than 40 cars on the entry list, but it's not entirely unsurprising with a brand new car that, as we'll talk about in a moment, has had some supply chain issues. Teams are having a difficult time getting all the parts and pieces they need in a timely fashion, with so much care and emphasis being put on the 36 charter teams. Any non-charter team is likely having an even more difficult time assembling a next gen for the start of the 2022 season. So it's a bit disappointing, yes, because now the dual races will not mean nearly as much as they have even in recent years. And even in recent years, there's at least been a couple of cars that are we're in danger of going home. This year it seems unlikely, at least, that will be the case. Not impossible, we're still over a month away from the Daytona 500, but it's unlikely at this point. Now on the flip side, the Xfinity Series, I don't know the official car count yet, but there are estimates that they could have upwards of 45, maybe close to 50 cars on the Xfinity Daytona entry list. So I've seen some people on Twitter joking about this, but can we move the dual races to the Xfinity Series just for this year? Because that would be pandemonium. We'll see what those entry lists look like, but yes, as of now, the Daytona 500 entry list seems a bit scarce. But one thing that won't be scarce are the number of fans in the stands. That's right, the Daytona 500 is sold out once again. 101,000 seats in the grandstands have been sold, including all of the RV camping area. Always good to sell out a big event like this, more than a month in advance. That's great. The hype for the new car making its high-banked, high-speed debut, I'm sure is driving some of those ticket sales. Obviously, we'll see the next gen car a couple weeks earlier in LA for the Clash, but the little quarter-mile track is going to be sort of its own standalone spectacle of an event. The Daytona 500 is a staple, it's a tradition. No surprise to see that fans have turned out for that race. Hopefully it's not a dud the way the 2013 Daytona 500 was in many ways, the first year of the Gen 6 car. Keeping my fingers crossed because drivers may have an initiative to race cleaner, race a bit more carefully in February. Because like I mentioned, teams are dealing with supply shortages. Many teams have not been able to get the parts and pieces of the next gen that they wanted to get at this point to have enough cars built to start the season off comfortably. Remember, a few months back, NASCAR announced that the rule for 2022 is that each team, and by team I mean individual car, like the 14 team, the 22 team, each team will be allowed 7 next gen chassis at a given time that they can rotate between on a week-to-week basis. Right now, it sounds like most teams have at most 2 or 3. Kelly Crandall reporting this from Richard Childress. Right now, Childress says they have 2 next-gen cars per team at RCR. He believes they'll have 3, if not 4, by the Clash, and she quotes him saying, "There is a shortage on pieces, but we're going to be okay, I think." Most drivers who've been asked about this the last couple days have said that they don't expect their competitors to race any less aggressively, especially not in the Daytona 500. But this potential part shortage is certainly on their minds. Bob Pockris was talking to Brad Keselowski yesterday after the first day of testing, and here's what Keselowski said. "I feel really bad for the guys in the garage. This car is easier to turn over than cars in the past by a good ways, but it's still a lot of work. It will be a big challenge for them ahead in the next few months because of the inventory constraints." Keselowski's not just a driver, now he's actually a partial team owner over at RFK Racing, so interesting to hear his perspective. NASCAR VP of Racing Innovation John Probst spoke to the media this week as well during the Daytona test, and he was asked by reporters about potential part shortages. And he said, "We're still on track for 5 cars per team from the latest timing we have out of the chassis supplier. We're not immune to the world. We're seeing COVID and supply chains being delayed and some of the distribution being delayed a little bit. Right now, we don't see any parts or pieces that are going to keep any car from racing in an event. We're concerned, but we're not in a situation where folks aren't going to be able to race." NASCAR voicing caution there, but not panic by any means. Now, it's worth mentioning, at this 2-day big Daytona test with most every team present, one team was noticeably absent, Stewart-Haas Racing. They did not send any cars to this test. They did have some people reportedly working with Rick Ware Racing, who has a technical alliance with SHR this year, but no SHR cars specifically were at the test. Joe Gibbs Racing, 4-car team, only sent 1 car, the 11. Hendrick sent 2, Penske sent 2, plus the Wood brothers, so other teams were more willing to send more parts and pieces out to Daytona, but a couple big teams noticeably held back a bit. The real difficulty comes from scheduling. So we have the LA Clash, which is all the way out on the West Coast, California, followed immediately by the Daytona 500 2 weeks later, which is on the opposite coast. But then following that, we immediately have the West Coast swing. 3 straight races, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Auto Club. Teams typically try to ship out multiple races worth of cars in one go to make logistics a bit easier if they don't have more than a couple of next-gen cars ready. If they were to wreck in practice or qualifying, if they wreck in back-to-back races, maybe they wreck at Daytona as well, which is very likely. There is some concern, at least, not a lot, but at least a little concern that teams will be put in a very tight situation during that West Coast swing. If they were sticking around east, if like Atlanta was the second race or Bristol or something, if they're still out near Charlotte where logistics were a little easier going to and from the race shop, I'm not sure we'd be hearing as much about these concerns. But since they immediately are going out west for more than half a month, there's some concerns there, and I think justifiably so. Luckily, Luckily, the next-gen car does seem to be very versatile. Bob Pockrass reported this. Joey Logano said the car he tested yesterday at Daytona likely will race the Clash and Auto Club. He'll have a different car for the Daytona 500. When they first announced the next-gen, they said, hey, we're trying to build a car that maybe swap out a couple small pieces here and there, can be used at a wide variety of racetracks. You wouldn't have thought about using a short track car on a near super speedway, the Clash versus Auto Club. You would not have thought about doing that in the Gen 6 era. At least no major team would have considered doing that. So already a clear difference between the Gen 6 and the next gen. Maybe that'll help with some of the constraints put on the teams during that West Coast swing. It's reassuring to hear from Brad Keselowski, Richard Childress, John Probst that they don't believe teams won't be able to race, but it's still a concern nonetheless, and it could affect the way drivers choose to race, especially out at the LA Clash, possibly the Daytona 500, and for sure, I think that West Coast swing. I don't think we'll see some drivers push the issue the way we've seen in years past. Now, Joey Logano says he won't be one of them. Joey Logano told the media that he's going to continue to put it all out on the line as he's known to do, and he showed this in testing. Let's look at some clips from testing now. Here are some clips from NASCAR, who, shout out to them, streamed both days of testing. They've been great about this. They've streamed a lot of the next-gen testing over the last year or so, and I think that's great. Great engagement. Fans love it. Every time I tune in during the day, in the middle of a work day, there's 5, 6, 8, 10,000 people watching. That's great. Great community engagement. Love to see it. Great call by NASCAR and their entire media team. Anyway, back to what's happening on the racetrack. I mentioned Joey Logano. Yeah, he was hanging it all out in testing, knowing that next-gen cars and parts were a shortage. Look at him and Denny Hamlin slice things up right here. Racing pretty close. Both drivers making some pretty quick, aggressive moves there in front of the pack, but this is all really encouraging to see. NASCAR confirmed this week that they're going to go with 510 horsepower, similar to last season, at least the second half of last season, and a 7-inch rear spoiler at all super speedway races this year. And that includes, apparently that includes Atlanta Motor Speedway. Sounds like they were happy with what they saw as far as speeds are concerned. It sounds like they're hitting mid 180s, high 180s in a pack, which is still a good 10 or more miles per hour off from when speeds were up over 200 miles an hour a year and a half ago, back when Logano flipped at Talladega, or when Newman, of course, had his crazy wreck at Daytona. They've dialed the speeds back since then. Remember, they cut the wicker bill off. They reduced the horsepower middle of last season. They're sticking with that 510 horsepower, 7-inch rear spoiler with these next-gen cars. So the speeds sound good. That's good and great, but how do the cars handle in the draft? Obviously, we aren't sitting behind the wheel of these cars, but watching from above, this looks pretty good. Lots of slicing and dicing. Look at this. Oh, where's Justin Haley going? Oh, good thing he backed out of this. This is a test. Watch out, boy. Looks like guys can still get great runs. Look at Kurt Busch right here. Gets a huge one and able to clear himself. I mean, there you go. Way to make a pass for the lead. That's how you do it. I was worried we'd see huge bubbles of air like we did early in the Gen 6 Super Speedway era. We don't seem to be having those issues with the next gen. So I'm very encouraged with what I've seen the last couple of days. Yes, it's a test, and yes, teams were trying some probably illegal things. Like a lot of people were talking about Eric Jones in the 43. Look how skewed out this thing is. Skewed. It looks like the car's pointed at the wall. What the heck? There's no tech at these tests, so that car is almost certainly illegal and would not pass pre-race or post-race inspection. But they're testing stuff, finding data, maybe finding the absolute limit. I have no idea. Looks pretty silly. So I know this is just a test. I know it's not real racing action, but I'm very encouraged by what I saw watching these live streams and watching clips from a lot of my friends who were out at the test yesterday. A lot of fans took note of some two-car tandem style drafting that appeared here and there during the drafting test. This clip right here of a couple Penske cars drafting, they were able to stay locked up by themselves for a full lap around Daytona. Not sure what their speeds look like. They were by themselves, not surrounded by any sort of pack, but that's certainly worth noting. Now, Brad Keselowski, again, when talking to Bob Pockrass, says he doesn't expect much two-car tandem in race conditions, saying, "We had ideal conditions today in a testing scenario that allow you to do things like that I don't think you'll be able to do when we come back to race." Joey Logano did say that there might be some situations where we're able to two-car tandem a little with the next gen, but maybe not a lot. Either way, if we get something that looks kind of like, I don't know, like 2012 when it was mostly pack racing, but here and there guys could lock up for short periods of time and make up a lot of ground, that was kind of fun. I liked that variety of racing styles, of drafting styles. I don't want to see full two-car tandem like 2010 or something again, but maybe a slight hybrid where there's the opportunity to two-car tandem here and there. I think that could spice things up. I'm a fan of that. That's gonna do it. That's all I've got to talk about. Lots of new information, some old, but a lot of new information coming out of Daytona the last 2 days. I'm very excited for next month's Daytona 500. More excited now than I was a week ago. A week ago, I was still concerned. I thought, oh, drivers are gonna take it really easy. Still not sure how these cars race on the bigger ovals. How's this gonna work? After what I've seen the last 2 days, I think they have a pretty solid baseline rules package in place for the super speedways. I think we'll see some good action this year. Better than what we saw in 2013, for sure. That's my early prediction. I don't think that's a super crazy prediction, but that's my early one. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. That's gonna do it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. As always, a huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. I truly appreciate your support each and every month. It means a lot. More to come this week. I've been finalizing some of my travel plans for this season. The LA Clash is right around the corner. I will be there for that race. A lot of you have asked if I'll be there. I will be there for the LA Clash. Can't wait. Likely gonna be a spectacle both in person and on TV. I can't wait for that race. I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good one, y'all.